Sorry, you just share. We'll PDF it. All right, I'm just going to show the whole screen, but we can do. All right. Good evening, everyone. For those who are joining us online, we appreciate your patience. We are sorting through a technical issue here and are ready to go. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the June 7th River City Middle School Rezoning Committee meeting. We have some exciting things to talk about tonight, some great folks from RPS to hear from. But first, I want to kick it off by turning it over to my colleague and co-facilitator, co-chair of this committee, Dr. Aaron Brown. Aaron is going to lead us in an opening activity to kind of frame the evening for us. Aaron, your microphone.
And celebrate the work that we're able to accomplish. Getting not a small piece, getting out of the so I would like to call for the next week to get us a very good all of the time that it's to be on the committee, it was a lot of after a long day, that is a sacrifice, but I think for us and their future, that sometimes we have to do that. I didn't know all. I just pages to celebrate everything that we put on the page to outstanding leadership we are blessed with the principles of looking for the school system. Ms. Walsh, which is city middle school, and we feel well you guys are superb. I've been had such jewels in the school system. And I just want to say that I want to take it. I didn't know that all I came here, the principal of the city, more the principals that Lisa and I, you are phenomenal. I just want to share that. Thank you so much for that presentation. Would anyone else like to share?
I'm not saying this just because I'm the boss, but this is a lot of collaboration, forceful leadership, super amazing. I've had to see and work with colleagues and rezoning. It's specifically something that people get very territorial about. It was great to see and come to the consensus. It was great to see and step up to support one another. So yeah, that is a reflection to me. I see it every day. But on the topic of the rezoning, which is very controversial territory, they show collective advocacy. Thank you.
And also, sometimes, I control my feedback and do it through the school. And, I just also like to thank my colleagues, for the support to come together. I think really you know, after moving Texas and I hear my other students here, so thank you all for the relationships that we built on the community and coming together more understanding to make sure that the city has more. So thank you everyone. Good evening, everyone. I would like to congratulate everyone to collaboration. We all came together. No hidden agendas. This is about doing work for the students on the south side, the students that will become students. And taking the leadership, the process from Ushon, with city, who's the partner, the assistant principal, the community member, and all the things off. And the work that we put into the final follow-up. I'm going to say looking forward to this rollout smoothly in the fall. We have a little like the whole team management, like this is part of the work of the children, families that we serve. Thank you. All right, thank you everyone who shared the questions. I think it's really important when we do a process that is hours of time to kind of acknowledge and put into it and take away these lessons because we don't know what they want in school. And so, we also have highlight things done and write it down and we'll help us think better and with all of them. So, moving on to the question, we also wanted to spend some time today sharing with you what has happened since the recommendation was approved. So what has been happening behind the scenes? We have been performing without this. We want to share with you how we can understand a bit about the transition plan, and then we have some of our RPS staff here from various departments who can help us get insight into, you know, when we move students and what is the approach that we can take thinking about what that looks like. And so we'll be able to hear from them at the final part of our meeting and share with you information on making sure that our students are successful at every attend. So I will thank you for get us started.
I need a microphone. We're making it work over here. Thank you, Dr. Brown. If I may, I want to add to the reflections just to name kind of a reflection and a gratitude in advance of all of the various folks who are making this next phase of the work happen. In particular, the school teams. So Principal Waller and her team, Principal Ricky and her team, Dr. Gaines and her team, and then Principal Murphy Braxton as well and her team are just lending all of their thought partnership time and energy to making sure that students are transitioning in a loving way. So I'm super excited about that, as well as all of the central office folks who work tirelessly every day to make sure the same thing happens. And then finally, want to also just note that the passion and care that was exhibited by members of the public during this process needs to be named. And I just want to say thank you to all of the folks who weren't a part of the committee, but spent time coming to engagement opportunities, to sharing their feedback via email, via the Google form, by coming to public comment. Regardless of where folks stood, it was clear that everybody cares about what's best for kids. So just want to name that we really appreciate that as well. So like Aaron said, we have successfully moved forward to the next phase of this work, which is we have new school boundaries, which were approved in early May by the school board. And the new zones are going to take effect next year. We're going to get into some more detail in a second, but we've done some wonderful gratitude. But again, just want to remind folks of what a success this work has been so far and will be. The new middle school boundaries are pictured here. I know this isn't the most detailed map, but folks can go to our online school locator, which is available in a variety of places if you're at rvaschools.net. If you go to the rezoning webpage, the subpage of rvaschools.net, there's a link to the school locator there. It's also all over the enrollment sections of rvaschools.net, which you can get to at rvaschools.net/enroll. And when you go to that page, you can see the new middle school boundaries, which are seen here. And you can see these new boundaries are things that we on this committee are quite familiar with. Want to note just to folks how the school locator can be used, which you can see here is available at www.croppermap.com/Richmond. Families can go ahead and log in to this site and enter their address to see their middle school zones, as well as their preschool, elementary, and high school zones. You'll notice in this screenshot here that this address is showing an example of a school an address that was impacted by rezoning. So you can see the middle school boundary shows River City, the 22-23 approved middle school boundary shows Brown, and then that red bold font says this address was impacted by the boundary changes. So we wanted to make sure that it was clear for folks if their address was impacted by rezoning that they would know that. Those links take folks to their school websites, and want to let folks know that this website went live and was updated the day or a couple days after the final approval vote. So this has been live for quite some time for folks to go in and see how their address was impacted by the final boundary line. The school locator can be translated within their web browser. So you can see here there's a screenshot of a translated version. Though we want to just highlight right now that we are working on a couple of things to make that even easier for families. One is a how-to that'll be available both on the rezoning section of the website and our enrollment sections of the website, available to translate into any language on how do you translate this page in your web browser easily. And we're also working with the company that hosts this map to create a parallel Spanish version that won't need to be translated on any browser. It'll just live in a Spanish version in perpetuity. And we'll make sure that that is publicly announced and shared widely as soon as that project is complete. When the rezoning final proposal was taken to the school board for a vote for approval, there were a number of things on May 2nd that we announced we would begin to do once and if the new boundary was approved. And so just want to share with the committee tonight the things that have already occurred and are underway with regards to the next steps of this work. So school counselors received lists of students that were now in their zone and information about those students. So they could help with course selection. We know master scheduling for middle school is well underway, and other school transition related items. So middle school counselors receive typically before the end of the year the list of the students that they'll receive next year. And this year we added identifiers for the students that were rezoned so they can make sure they know exactly who those students are and get the supports that they need. Like I just shared, the online locator maps have the previous and the new middle school zone maps, so families can see what their zones are and whether they're impacted by the change. And those maps went live very shortly after the final boundary was approved. The operations department have received data on the new students and their new zones, so those students who were impacted by rezoning who will be in middle school next year, to inform planning for things like space and use adjustments and route planning for the transportation department. And we fully intend and are continuing to send updated lists as and if those lists change, new students enroll in RPS, and we'll continue to do that as we normally do throughout the year. We ran the middle school open enrollment lottery on May 10th. The initial offer round is complete and wait lists are moving on a school-by-school basis. So after the new boundaries were approved, we were able to make sure that any student who was rezoned and didn't need to apply to a school for which they had originally submitted an application was notified, hey, you're actually rezoned to the school, so you don't need to apply. We removed all of those, and then we ran the lottery. If folks have questions, I'll go ahead and plug. If you're watching online, if you have a question about the lottery, please email my team at enrollrps@rvaschools.net. The Office of Family Engagement, led by Dr. Brown, did just an incredible job completing phone calls to every student and family impacted by rezoning and who will be in middle school next year. Those calls, if they didn't result in a conversation after multiple attempts, led to home visits. If a home visit didn't lead to a conversation with someone, then information was left at the person's home.
I don't want to add any more on the plate of the school counselors, but. So my question, I said I didn't want to add any more work on the plate of the school counselors, but I also, have we thought about visiting the schools, like the elementary schools that will be impacted with the rezoning, changing of the boundary lines to do their scheduling?
Sorry, I was getting a little microphone feedback. That's a great point, Ms. Page. On the next slide, we're going to talk about the meetings that principals are having with families that are coming to their school next year to talk about various things. So there is already, there are meeting dates on the calendar and engagement around making sure families have opportunities to come to those virtually or in person to meet with those folks based on the school that they're going to. Would certainly be open to adding additional steps though if we decide there's more that can be done there. So certainly a good point.
Just let me add one more thing. And the reason why I suggested that, because it's that pre-planning in advance, and because we know at the beginning of the school year, we will have new students making that transition, and that can be cumbersome. So, I mean, I hope you all really put some thought into that, and doesn't necessarily have to be the school counselors, but a team of individuals that can talk to the students about planning their schedule for middle school. Yeah, before they get here. Yes.
Hey, Ms. Page, we also, so it's two opportunities for parents. So we have one where they come to the school, and we also have a virtual opportunity before we even begin our open houses and things that they will be invited to anyway. So, say for example, River City has a carnival, right? Those kids would be invited during the summer, as another opportunity to become a part of their school community and have another point of connection. So, yeah, we did have discussion around how do we really connect these families with the schools, and so they will have 2 opportunities, and then any additional opportunities that they would have as a participant of the school.
Thank you all for that great point. Dr. Brown, if you can make sure you take that note. And we will make sure that everyone who supports students with this transition has the information they need to do so. And then the last piece here of the things, on the things that we have already done, and then we'll get to things that we're currently doing and working on, is that the school teams who are receiving students as a result of rezoning mailed letters to students and their families welcoming to their school next year, and are hosting virtual and in-person introductory meetings, as Solomon just mentioned. And reminders for those meetings are going out via Remind to families' phone numbers. We'll note too that we also shared a set of letters for the River City team to distribute to the students who weren't rezoned, so that those students know that the River City team is excited for them to be River City Red Tails next year as well. And so we wanted to make sure that folks at River City who didn't get a letter weren't left thinking, well, was I not impacted by this? And so River City students got a letter too. And want to just give a shout out to all the amazing folks who work in the school offices to make those just Herculean efforts a reality. Getting letters out takes a lot of work. All right, so those are the things we've already checked off in the last month. And we have a few more things that are in process. So we also said on May 2nd that the Rezoning Committee would convene to hear about RPS resources and talk next steps for allocation and implementation. We are here today to have those conversations and kick off that work. We said we'd hold community meetings for students and families in impacted areas. And like we've mentioned, principals are hosting meetings for their students, both virtually and in person in June. And then we'll have, as Solomon said, more events as we get closer to the school year for welcoming those folks into their school communities. And then finally, central office teams will build support plans for schools receiving new students. We're going to hear from a variety of content leaders and experts from central office today about what they do and how they do that work, and they'll be sharing a little bit about that work that they're going to be doing over the summer. So before we do that, I want to share a couple of slides that will be some framing for the conversation that we're going to have, or the sharing we'll hear from my colleagues in various offices. So this slide here shows of the schools that were impacted by rezoning, including River City, given students were being rezoned from River City, as categorized by students' exceptional education status. So 2 of the teams that we'll hear from, not the only 2, but 2 of the teams we'll hear from are the exceptional education team and the LEAP team. And so we wanted to present data on those students as it is right now. So I think actually at this point, what I want to do is turn it over to Renisha Parks, who is on stage now. And Renisha, I can give you my microphone. And Renisha is going to share a little bit with us about her work, and we'll leave this slide here as she shares with us.
I was just thinking as we look at this slide, and Ms. Page is going to kill me for bringing this up, but this makes me think about the inactive status that was mentioned last night about the computers. How do we know that all of these students that have been identified to be moved or rezoned are actually active in the system?
Do you mean active status as like all students, not just exceptional education, but all students? Yep, so the numbers that we're using and looking at are for active students in Aspen. So we're not including students who have withdrawn. Though of course there will be fluctuation of students who do leave the division and students who enroll in the division. So we'll continue to update that information. But anytime we put a slide on a page of PowerPoint, it'll be a static snapshot in time of that point that we pulled the data. But know that when we do pull data, we only look at active students as of the time we were pulling it. Okay, Renisha?
Yes, I'm here. Good evening, committee members. The Office of Exceptional Education currently serves about 3,400 students with IEPs and 504 plans. 779 of them are at the middle school level. And for the students who will be rezoned, there's going to be implications to about 430 of those students altogether. I do want to assure the rezoning committee that services and a full array of services are available at all of our comprehensive schools. So we serve students in regular education courses, self-contained classes, and a full array of supports and intervention courses that you will hear about a little bit later. For our students who require assistive technology and also related services such as speech, OT, and PT, there will be no impact to those services. And we are excited to support all of our middle school teams with making sure that our caseloads are minimal and our IEP services are provided to the greatest extent possible with very little impact. We know that staffing has been a challenge this year, but that is something that we're working on to ensure that on day one, all of the students are assigned to a case manager and they will receive their services.
Thank you for the information. Question: what about the students, like, making that transition, starting school in September, and the 504 and the IEP is up for reevaluation?
Thank you for that question, Ms. Page. We actually, in March, started with the transition process for our students who will be transitioning vertically from 5th grade to 6th grade. That was a very, very tedious exercise. However, we felt that it was something that was very necessary, and all of our middle school teams participated in that. And that was an opportunity for families to ask, what does the middle school level look like, the switching of classes, courses, and services that are going to be offered. Additionally, for those students who have intensive support needs, we made sure that there was some conversation, because there is some angst about the changing in courses and all of the services, and making sure that their needs will be met at each of those schools. So yes, we have addressed that.
Did anyone else have any questions related to what Renisha shared about exceptional education? Otherwise, we can move in next to share a bit about her team's work is Dr. Duhart from the LEAP team. So Dr. Duhart, if you're ready to join us on stage, I can't see from where I am. I can move to the next slide. And while we do that, I do want to...
Good evening. Luke, I have a microphone over here.
Perfect. All right. Thanks, Dr. Duhart.
No problem. Thank you so much. Good evening, everybody. Buenas tardes o buenas noches para esos que hablan español. It's a pleasure being here. I just want to make sure that I address the changes that are going to take place for our English learners. In the division right now, we are serving currently about 3,700 English learners in various proficiency levels from level 1 to level 4.3. Those are the students that actually receive services from our LEAP teachers. And let me just clarify what LEAP means. LEAP is Language Instruction Educational Program, and if you see my logo on my mask, we actually have the logo, so it identified us. Our team is bilingual, so parents know that we are able to communicate with them as well. So as you can see, we are going to have about 715 students that will be impacted with this rezoning. We have Bushel that is going to receive a larger number of students. Our process to identify our English learners, it's done at the Welcome Center. The students are screened, and if they are identified to receive services, they are actually placed in the LEAP program. The way we service our students is it depends on their proficiency level. So for students that are at level 1 and they are new to the country, those are those students that are identified as newcomers, and they have the highest need. So we have a Newcomers Academy here at River City and a Newcomers Academy at Hvac. However, this coming year, we will actually serve our students in their schools. So we are looking at our resources to make sure that our students' needs are met. Yes, ma'am. Ms. Page.
So do we have the breakdown? Do we have the breakdown of the newcomer students for each middle school?
At this time, we are still working on it. We know that only 3 students from here are newcomers that will go to Bouchard.
So you're saying that the resources for the students would still have the same supports as River City and Georgeville?
Yes, ma'am. We're looking at our resources to make sure that our students' needs are met.
So, Dr. Brown, we would like to, once you all get the actual breakdown of numbers, we would like to see that. Because we want to ensure that the resources are in each middle school and want to make sure that it's equitable.
Absolutely. I definitely agree with you, Ms. Page, and we are definitely going to make sure that our resources match the needs of our students.
So, a follow-up question. So when do you expect to have those numbers?
We are still looking into disaggregating the data on the students that we have. We just received our WIDA scores, or these are the scores of the test that we give our students once a year to track progress. Once we disaggregate that data and we know where they are, we can definitely tell you how many students are at level 1, level 2, level 3, and level 4, and where they will be placed.
Get off the thing. I got, she gonna hog up all the questions. Are you also taking into account, since you mentioned the Newcomer Academy, are you also taking into account students that you don't know yet are coming into the zone? And how will we provide resources for them? So if we have to remove some of the resources per se from River City to Brown or Bouchard, and then the numbers go up because this is the Newcomer Academy, how are you going to balance that out as well? I think that's just something to think about, because we don't really know who's coming in the fall, and we don't know who's coming to the country. So I think we do need to think about that as well, because that could create an imbalance in a way if we don't manage that. If the resources are gone, then we're struggling, so.
Absolutely. We work very closely with the Welcome Center. We're looking at the trends that we've had for the last 3 years in terms of how many students are coming throughout the year, so we can make a projection. Of course, we don't know how many students are going to come in 22, 23, but we can prepare if we look at the data that we already have in place, and we can make some projections. That way we can calculate how many teachers we need based on the number of students that we have in RPS.
So your projection is based on a trend, your trends?
Correct. That's correct.
And also, I think it would be helpful if we can see the breakdown of resources that's provided to our newcomer students.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Hi, Dr. Duhart.
Hi, Ms. Ensom. How are you?
Good. So I just, I want to know what the protocol will be next year for newcomer students that want to go to Bouchard instead of River City, because I know that we received several newcomers this year because they preferred to come to Bouchard. So is there a certain number that we're just gonna say, 10 to 15 newcomers might go to Bouchal this year because they want to? Or will every newcomer have to go to River City?
This coming year, our students are all going to their home schools. So we are going to work with each middle school or each school in the division to make sure that they prepare to receive newcomers and that our teachers are in place to provide the services that they need. Absolutely. Thank you, Emson. Yes, Ms.
I'm not going to say this is my last question. So when are we going to start planning for the newcomer students that will be attending Bouchal?
We've already started.
Okay, you already started, okay.
Yeah, we've already started. We're in the planning stages. Yes.
I do have a question about the Newcomer Resources. Can you all be specific in what resources you're referring to?
I'll speak to that. Previously, Bouchal Middle School was the school for the majority of the newcomers that were entering RPS on the middle school level. That's when our capacity was about 800. We service what is particularly considered most of the predominant Hispanic neighborhoods in the South Side. At that time, we had 8.5 ESL teachers. That was when I went to the school board myself specifically to ask for a certain change in the master schedule and supports given to my teachers as far as professional development, a change in the master schedule. So there were self-contained classes that were added. This is all before we received the LEAP program guide. Currently, as Ms. Empson has stated, our master schedule does not reflect that, where those newcomers can get the level of service minutes that's required by the VDOE. So we just want to make sure that that's appropriately placed.
So staffing.
Staffing and resources. Currently, there's no resources that are available for scholars that come in that have, there aren't any resources for scholars that have that much of a limited English proficiency. Most of our scholars are 3s and 4s. So it's a very different level of instruction. That's a very different curriculum that we're using. And we didn't get most of our 1s until later in the school year, I'm assuming when there wasn't the ability for River City to house additional scholars in their newcomer program.
Yes, and right now, since, just like I stated, we have 3 students that are considered newcomers that will be going to Bouchal, and we're going to make sure that they receive the services that they need.
So, and yeah, Dr. Duhart, we had this conversation yesterday, and I know a couple of weeks ago about getting the information and the numbers. We also know, and I can definitely know this is what is being seen in our middle schools. Our scholars don't just come in September. They continuously come, and then you see a surge in January when their schooling ends in some of their countries, because their schooling goes from like a January to December maybe, and then there's a surge of scholars that come in. With the areas that we are picking up for rezoning, we're going to be seeing that trend. So it's going to be more than the 3 scholars, but here it is. Even if it is 3 scholars, I want to make sure that there's resources that are available that are going to meet their needs.
Dr. Duhart.
Absolutely.
Do
Yes,
you
sir.
also mind if I add, we also have a meeting set up June 14th, right? So it's already on the calendar for us to have explicit discussion about Bouchal and how we service the newcomers. So it's on the calendar for June 14th. Principal Waller.
That's correct.
All right, thank you for those wonderful questions and comments. I think you guys want to start another committee. So tonight, we are not going to solve those problems, but I'm going to write all the questions down. We're going to work through it. We really just wanted to highlight the approach tonight. And so Dr. Duhart kind of shared like what that is, but we won't get into the weeds too much tonight. So I do want to transition. I'm not sure if there's anyone from Culture, Climate, and Success. All right, I think Michelle is going to come and speak to that.
Good evening, everyone. Our esteemed colleague, Angela Jones, was unable to be with us this evening, but she is the Director of Culture, Climate, and Student Services, and so did just want, sends her regrets that she couldn't be here this evening, but wanted to name that the services and resources that fall under her department are social workers, and we're able to reallocate those to schools based on population. Behavior specialists that are able to come and provide additional supports as needed, as well as our restorative and trauma supports. The student support specialists are another role whose focus on bullying prevention, and we know that that's something that can pop up sometimes in middle school, is relationships and the conflict resolution. And so while unfortunately I'm not able to share the specifics of that, I wanted to at least name those resources tonight, and we'll be meeting with her and the principals in the coming weeks for ratios and allocations.
Thank you, Michelle, for sharing that. Are there questions?
Sorry, I have a question
Yeah, of course.
for you. When you said bullying prevention, is that also in digital and social media? Because I know that we've been having many trouble with social media bullying, and even officers cannot do much of cyberbullying.
That's absolutely part of the work. Also with our counselors at that level too, engaging in our SEL curriculum, but absolutely, that's something that they work to address. Yes, thank you for raising that.
Another one for you. When you say the trauma, is that including also for newcomers, the trauma they have been through from their country, of their country, from their country, and this country? Are we also focusing, because there's a big difference between those type of traumas?
Absolutely. It really is student-based, and so helping to identify students who, yes, have had those traumas and how to support especially staff in being trauma responsive in the way that they engage with students.
Okay, I have another one for you. With the kids that will get the services of, let's say, the trauma or community circles or any activities, would it be a family engagement thing, or would it be only children with the social worker that you guys will have?
The community circles are actually a division level approach, so all students engage daily in community circles. Maybe one of our middle school principals could share how that works in their schedule. Latanya, Jacqueline, Stacy, any one of you, could you share how community circles are embedded in your daily schedule, just for everyone? And then we could talk about the restorative circles.
So first period is where the community circles are pushed in for all students. And so a lot of times, some of the other classes other than first period are also doing community circles because it's a different group of children and dynamics. So students who are in our LEAP classes, their teachers are doing community circles and having discussions also in periods beyond the first period.
I was basically a little bit more focused if the child was having the proper counseling for trauma, would the parents also be involved in that? Something like child saviors, kind of, I don't know if you guys know about the program, but they do work with trauma, but I was more towards, the newcomers and that type of trauma, because every single one is very, very different.
Okay, so we do have,
Oh, sorry.
sorry, Michelle. We do have Child Savers here on our campus. They have their own office, and students go to Child Savers based on a referral. Parents are made aware that their child is involved in Child Savers, but we do have that here on campus. And we also utilize our communities and schools, RBHA, right here on campus. They're all housed here.
So would it be that all those resources will be in each public schools for Richmond, or is it just specific schools that have counselors or have enough, or depending on the amount of students?
So we do have a partnership, a contract with Child Savers for clinical psychologists and the types of supports that you're talking about. Angela is the one who helps coordinate that partnership. Right now, it is a school-based partnership, so she's part of these conversations. So yes, they are, for example, are at River City or at another school. So that's certainly what part of what this is going to look like. And something tells me she's texting me, and she is. She said our community partners will work with families and resources. Like, for example, she referenced Sacred Heart for newcomers right now is a partnership that we have that's targeted to that group too. So, thank you.
One of the things with Sacred Hearts, they have an after-school program, and they come at least once a week to pick up students. Either it's an art program or some other type of program to support our newcomer students.
Well, thank you for that. I do work for Sacred Heart. But yeah, we don't have the resources to go to every single school. But I was wondering if Bouchard and other schools will also have different partnerships, especially when it comes to trauma for our children.
Yeah, and I'll answer that. All of our schools, first of all, have communities in schools. All 7 of our middle schools have that, and I believe 4 out of 7 have RBHA. And then also, I do believe all of our schools this coming school year will have a what do you call it? We used to call it violence prevention, but it's called a student support specialist. So all of our middle schools will have one this upcoming school year, and so they are in-house supports. But again, I think we talked about Child Savers or CREST. I mean, all of our schools have access to that, but again, it's by referral, and parents also have to opt in. Yeah.
All right, thank you. Great questions, Ms. Reyes. And we will continue to work on that information. Is there one more comment?
Yeah, just one more comment
All right.
about the L population and trauma and resources. I think a lot of that starts with relationship. And so I know that the ESL teachers, especially at Bouchard, have a really great way to just create those long-lasting and deep relationships. And so our students always come to us with their problems, whether it's at home or emotional or what they've experienced before. And we always, the countless dozens of students this year that we have been told serious things about, and we send them to the counseling that they need, and the parents as well. So they have bilingual support, teacher support, and they feel comfortable in us coming to us, telling us what they need. So that's just where it starts too.
And question, who supports you as a teacher?
Her principal.
Oh, no, I mean,
No, to answer your question, the second question and then the first, really her principal, our administrative team, and each other. It's a very strong school family bond that we have. I've reached out to SCAN to conduct wellness projects. We had one yesterday, as a matter of fact, and they'll be going all the way to the end of the school year. Our leadership team does morale boosters weekly, just because we want to make sure that our staff is pumped and ready and they understand that they're supporting each other. To answer your previous question about supports, so we do have 2 CIS, RBHA, 2 Child Savers. We have 3 counselors. 1 is bilingual. Our student support specialist was full-time. We currently share it with River City, but they will be full-time again next year. And then Many of our teachers are trained in restorative practices, and some of them have that training in level 2 healing circles, which is very important because if there is conflict amongst our scholars, our teachers or additional staff can actually go into our mindfulness space, which is different from our RISE room, to provide supports in that way for our scholars. We also ensure that we have our parents understand that when we do any referrals, that they also can have a referral to RBHA as well for family counseling. So it's not just the student, because we also know that some of the issues that our scholars are facing are not of their own making, right? It's maybe some temporary or permanent family dynamic that has to be addressed. But as Mrs. Empson said, our team is absolutely amazing. Our community circles that they do every day emphasizes what we feel is one of the most important things that makes Bouchard special, which is intentional relationship building.
So just for clarification, so when we talk about trauma, because all of our students experience or have experienced traumas at some point or another. So these supports are in place for all of our students.
That is correct. Yep.
I just didn't, I want people to
Yes.
feel, to know
Yeah.
that we're supporting all of our students.
Exactly. And that is a perfect transition because I think these are really important questions. But when we're talking about this conversation of resource allocation, we're not talking about not having some students have support while others get support. It's really how do we have all of our students get what they need regardless of the school that they attend. So please know that all of our kids are going to get those resources. I do want to make sure that we have time to hear from Sydney Gunter, who's our Interim Director of Academic Programs and Supports. So she will come forward and share a little bit about the approach to the work, and then she will be followed by Ronald Hathaway, who's our Director of Facilities, because we do actually need to consider space when we are moving children into different buildings.
Good evening, team. Just very quickly, the Academic Programs and Supports team is responsible for implementing our response to intervention model, where we provide additional mathematics and reading support to all students who need that extra support, whether they're general ed, exceptional ed, LEAP students who need that support. And so we are now in the process of SOL testing, as we know, So we'll take that data and from that information going into next year, we will ensure that regardless of where the students are, they are scheduled appropriately to receive that additional mathematics or reading intervention support in whatever courses that they need as dictated by their reading and math data. And so going into next year, after students, we get the data from the SOL testing and their final grades, we'll place students appropriately and make sure they have all the additional resources that they need in those courses.
Do we have any questions for Sydney before Bobby comes up?
Sorry about that. All right, good evening. Oh, thank you. All right. So a little bit about facilities and the locations we're talking about. Brown, a little background on Brown. In 2021, 2022, we did some HVAC upgrades there, so we feel good about the system work that we did there. 22, 23, we were planning to replace the boilers in the building, so that'll add to the building comfort. That's the extent of what we had planned for Brown so far. If we get into Benford, a couple years back, I don't know if you recall, we replaced the windows in the building, which helped to tighten up the window. The envelope of the building, we did that about 3 years ago. We are This year in 21-22, we just completed eliminating the pneumatic controls in the building to give us better comfort levels in the building. We have a little bit more work to do there. For Benford, looking ahead into the rezoning for the new kids, we are going to be putting in a new dance studio in the basement area to expand on that a little bit. And another thing that we've have in progress right now at Benford is we're in the process of adding cameras to the building, and we'll have a couple of card access to be able to secure the building a little better. Looking ahead at the Bouchal, in 21-22, we completed the HVAC upgrades in the building. We're still fine-tuning some controls and stuff there. Looking ahead at Bouchal, we have some work scheduled for 22-23 and actually replacing the chiller there next year. And we are going to be moving forward with card access control there with on 2 doors as well. At Benford? So at Benford, we did replace the windows in the building 3 years ago. That was much needed. We had some trouble with the windows that were actually falling out of the building, so that was a safety concern. HVAC upgrade, we did, the building used to use pneumatic controls, which is an old way to control temperature in the building, so we eliminated those pneumatic controls, and we actually installed the newer technology, DDC controls, which is digital technology. We're going to be putting in a dance studio downstairs to expand the dance studio to accommodate more kids. We are going to be adding cameras to the building, throughout the building and the exterior, and then add access control as well. I think one thing I left out is we are going to be removing some lockers from the space to create a little bit of collaborative space on the outside of some of the classrooms. The next school would have been Bouchal. What's that? That's okay. What do you need me to tell you what we're doing at Bouchal? Okay, so in 21-22, we did upgrade the HVAC system in the building. Very similar to Benford, we eliminated the pneumatic controls there to move everything to digital technology. We're going to follow up on that and do a little bit more work next year and replacing the actual chiller for the building. So that'll come in 22-23. We're all going to be adding card swipe access to 2 doors in that building as well to provide a safer, secure environment. And I think that's about it for. So the cameras in Bouchal are about 3 to 4 years old. I think Ms. Waller will recall we replaced those about 3 to 4 years ago.
Yes, so when he came over, we identified at the beginning of this year, January, the calendar year, a few blind spots that are needed, and additional camera actually in the main office. So there are about 4 additional cameras that just needed to be placed based on, there being some areas that weren't covered. But no, the camera system is newish, yes.
Sure.
Oh.
Yes. Yes, ma'am, thank you. And we thank your granddaughter for her participation on this committee. And she's been to all the different meetings that we've had where we've talked about the various middle schools that are going to be impacted by rezoning. So in this process, River City is a school that is overcrowded. And due to that, we recommended that some of the students from River City would be going to Lucille Brown, Benford, and also Bouchal. So it impacts those 4 schools. And right now, what we're talking about broadly, not specifically about any school, is how do we make sure that the children who are going to these schools get the resources that they need. So this meeting isn't designed to specifically talk about a single school, but really about this process. And we'll be continuing throughout the summer to make sure that the kids at all of the schools get what they need, including the school where your granddaughter attends. And she's been really giving us a student perspective on how this would impact other middle schoolers. Thank you for your question. Do we have any other questions? Bobby
Aaron?
was our last person. Yes.
Aaron, could
Oh,
I
Michelle?
just was going to
Yep.
just chime in real quickly to also just note, in addition to some of the specific things that Bobby talked about, we've also been meeting with principals and getting their specific wish lists. As you saw, the board allocated additional dollars to both Brown and Bouchal for some special projects. So I've been meeting with Principal Waller, and Principal Gaines and I are meeting this week as well. And we did a full walkthrough with Principal Ricky to identify some of those other little things that will make the building extra special for kids at all of the buildings. So just wanted to note that there's some of those other little things happening as well.
I have a question for that wish list. Are you gonna make it happen? Like, are you gonna apply everything that the schools need from that wish list?
I
Or
do
you're
have
gonna
the
try to
reputation of Olivia Pope,
choose?
so I am going to make it happen, yes.
Oh, okay, thanks. Just wanted to know, you guys.
All right, thank you, Bobby. So he was our last RPS lead who was going to share kind of how we're going to approach the different resources that we need for our students. I know we started the meeting with some reflections and celebrations, really wanted to be able to end with sharing the approach. While we didn't get into the weeds, I know we have some requests for information, which we will certainly get out to folks once all the numbers shake out and we know exactly what we're working with. But this summer is really about planning, and this meeting was really about us making sure that we were being transparent and that this group that worked so hard continued to be involved and understand what the next steps were in this process. So, Luke, do you have anything that you need to add before we conclude, or do you think we're good?
Yeah, I would just name for anybody who might be watching online, if you're a family who was impacted by rezoning and your student or students are going to be going to a new middle school, check your phone for text messages about meeting invites from your new school team. And if you haven't heard from anyone or you have questions, please don't hesitate to email us at enrollrps@rvaschools.net. And I think we do have Principal Ricky up on stage. Who is going to share just a bit of context since she's here with us tonight as well.
Good evening, everyone. I am sitting here with a lot of respect for the space that you all have created over the last few months. I want to give a lot of love to the Cluster 3 team, Solomon, Murphy Braxton, Waller, and Gaines. This work has been a labor of love that I've only been able to appreciate from afar. So I am here in service of this work to be able to allay any continued concerns about any of our River City families and friends coming to us north of the river to Binford. So my purpose here is just to serve that purpose. I am just extremely thrilled with the opportunities that all of our families continue to have in RPS thanks to the advocacy of people like you on this committee. It proves time and time again that the voices, the diverse perspectives, the depth of compassion and care just continue to reign through. And during such a really tough time, this committee's work has been centering the most important needs, which are student safety, because student safety will lead to academic success with the right people in the room, which I know all of our schools are striving to maintain every day. So with that being said, I am Melissa Ricky, and I'm the principal at Binford, and I have been there for 7 years. Sou brasileira, então eu falo português também. And I want to mention that because I know that Dr. Duhart and I have made this connection about representation and how important it is for students and families to see themselves and to be affirmed in spaces. And so sometimes I think there's a surface assumption about who we are and what we represent. And so this, to me, stands out as an opportunity to think about that more deeply with the assets and the opportunities that we have at Binford that have been leading success for several years for all of our students. And this shift is not going to change that because we are united. We're a one team in RPS. Cluster 3 is a very strong cluster of middle school principals. So with partnership with our division leadership, I heard a question about, will the resources be there for the first day of school? Man, I can just tell you, we are trying. We're hustling right now. Shout out to our teachers and Bobby and Michelle for taking time out of their day to just answer a question about orders for equipment, to Angela Jones, who gave us the heads up that we're going to get an additional staff member to support climate and culture. I know that to be true already. To the talent office to say, continue to be open to the things that may result for transfers for staff. So I feel very comfortable that I will be prepared to receive all students, whether they are open enrollment students, whether they are in-zone students, whether they are River City rezone students that are now in our zone in perpetuity. We are going to be ready. We have just, I think, because I have the microphone, I'll just mention, we have our first open house of 2 this coming Monday. It's virtual. Shout out to Luke and Aaron and the outreach team. When you said, Aaron, that your team has been moving quick to make those phone calls, trust and believe, as soon as we had the names, things went out and we started getting phone calls back. So things are moving quickly. So we have our first of 2 events on Monday. Our second one is Tuesday. The first is virtual, the second is face-to-face. And we already have slated our orientation dates for the summer. So those are going to be shared in public knowledge starting on Monday so our families can prepare. And our biggest thing I want to reassure everyone on this committee is your hard work will not be for naught. The things that you've put in place have absolutely been embraced by the Binford community. The road to get to the embrace has been hard. And I think there's no one here that knows that better than this committee. So I want to say that the Binford staff are excited. The Binford students who are starting to process in their teenage brains, right? The ones that are coming back are starting to think of like this in a very positive way, like, oh, great, more students, right? That means more opportunities to have bigger teams. Because 7 years ago, our school was under-enrolled. We had less than 200 students in the daily average attendance rate. And so health and PE class of 3 was not going to be a health and PE class. It was not going to be a championship winning basketball team. Sorry, Murphy Braxton, but our boys and our girls have swiped that up from you twice. So what I'm saying is our students are going to be excited because that's what we do. We make conditions for belonging for all students. So our students are already starting to think about how they're going to play a role in making sure that every student, whether they're from across the street on Floyd Avenue or down on this side of town, that there's going to be a way to feel belonging. So I'm here at your service to assure your families that you have done such a tremendous job holding during such a hard time, are going to find success immediately upon arrival. I hope to see many of them on Monday virtually, face-to-face on Tuesday, and throughout the coming months. So thank you for allowing me to have the microphone, and I am here to answer your questions, but I think I'll echo everything that's been mentioned. What's happening in all the schools is also happening at Binford. So thank you. Thank you, Dr. Brown.
Thank you, Principal Ricky. Did you have a question? Okay, yep.
One thing we didn't talk about or that wasn't present is transportation. I just wanted to know where we are with that and what's the update on that. And my other question was, do we have to, after this follow-up, go again before the board, or is this conversations that'll happen via email or once things are moving, just to ensure that even though we approved a specific plan, that the action is actually happening so that it doesn't kind of Did you have any? I just wanted to know if you had any thoughts
So
about that.
we do not need to go before the board again. The recommendation was approved, and now the work is really up to our leads that spoke to make sure that this happens. And so I'm certain that you and other board members will want to be kept abreast of what's happening, but we don't need to form a committee to do that work. But I will let Kanisha share about transportation, and I do know all kids will have transportation. That is the message we need.
I'm Kanisha John from Transportation. As far as transportation goes for the upcoming school year, we're still trying to get through this school year, so I can't say definitely what the routes are gonna look like. We've been made aware that River City might be on a different schedule, but we're right now, what we're trying to do is getting more drivers, so we're holding hiring events. One of them will be tomorrow, as many may know, but that's where we're at right now. It's a green light as far as moving those students to the other schools, so we'll get the routes ready in time for the next school year, but I can't give you definite how many routes or buses. We don't know what that will look like as of yet, but we'll be prepared.
Will we have a timeline? Like, I know these are questions I can ask offline, so I'm not gonna go too deep in it, but I do think, one of the issues that was raised is that a lot of, even prior to rezoning, families were finding out about transportation and all that, like at the last minute. So I can ask that offline. That's fine.
Thank you, Ms. John, for sharing. And I hope that the use of green light was a transportation team pun, because I particularly liked that. So I think just to close, I think this is a perfect closing moment to say there's so much more work to be done. And so I'm so excited that even though this is our last meeting as a committee, many of the folks who are here who work in administration are going to be continuing this work via email, in-person meetings, et cetera, both at schools and in central office to make sure that this implementation is a success and that kiddos are ready on the first day of school and supported in a loving environment, ready to learn. So on that note, I want to give credit to Dr. Brown on this, but we do have a small token of appreciation for all of our committee members. So in closing, Aaron, do you want to say a quick note about that? And then Aaron and I just want to say thank you again for all of your work over the last 6 months. We couldn't have done this without each and every one of you and are deeply grateful for all of your work. So Aaron, please take us home.
So we just have a plant for all of our committee members. It is a majestic orchid because you all have been so majestic and graceful. This was something that, was not easy, and you all just came and put your best foot forward, and we're always keeping the main thing, as our board members say, and that is our children. So we can't give you much more than a plant, but we want you to see it and water it and let it grow like the children that we want to succeed, and think about this process that you helped us, which is really going to impact a lot of our children, and I think improve the situation at River City for the better. So thank you so much for your time.